Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the Two Chiefs, One Mike podcast. This is episode number 29, and I'm Chief Mike Hawkins, and I'm not going to let Scott introduce himself yet because Scott happens to be our very special guest today. So, as many of you know, if you follow him on LinkedIn and other platforms, I'm dressed like this because I am still employed by the police department, and Scott is relaxed at home in his T-shirt because he's former chief, now retired, Scott Hughes.
Yeah, buddy. As of a month and 1 day ago, officially
Now, of course,
retired.
you're not retired, right? You're retired from your agency, but as always, you always have a ton of things going on. So I thought today I reached out and said, Scott, let's talk a little bit about your career, what you did, where you came from, where it started. Give everybody a little background in a who's who on Scott Hughes. So
Wow.
let's talk about, first off, just where'd you start? How'd you get into law enforcement? What was it that drove you to get into policing? Because we know now it's a hell of a time trying to find people.
Yeah, no doubt. I'll tell you, when I was about 7 years old, I think probably 1970 something.
I guess-
Yeah. Back in the day, my mother took me to a Kmart to get a picture taken. And she tells the story that I was inside this Kmart. I was probably 5, 6, 7 years old, something like that. And I refused to take this plastic badge that I had clipped onto my collar off my T-shirts I was wearing. And she said they tried to take it off for the picture, and I threw an absolute fit, like, no, I want to leave the badge on. So I did. My father was in the Marines. There's some of his Marine Corps stuff right there. And I think I got the desire to become a cop just from hearing about him in the Marine Corps. He was an MP in the Marines. He was a NOM. He was very involved in like the Chamber of Commerce and all the community things. So I think I just got the desire to want to serve the public after watching him, in my young years. He died when I was 22, so he never got to really see me become a full-time cop. But nonetheless, yeah, man, I can't point a finger on why I wanted to be a cop. But when I knew I wanted to become a police officer, which, like I said, I guess was way back in the day, I did everything I needed to do to pursue the profession. When I was like 15 years old, I joined an Explorer program. You guys got Explorers up there?
We do have
Yeah.
some around here. Not a lot of agencies
Yeah.
around us, but we do have some, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they're as popular as they used to be, but nonetheless, I joined a cadet like Explorer program, like 15 years old. Here in Ohio, you can enter the academy. I think it's still the same when you're 20 and a half, man. So as soon as I was 20 and a half, man, I jumped in the academy. And then I landed my first full-time job in this really small town, 1 square mile. But again, back in the day, when you went to the academy, if you didn't have a job, you could put yourself through the academy down here, like a lot of states. You can
Well, that's how even back when I went 99, most people put themselves through the academy. Now, like last academy we went to, it was unheard of. I think there was one person that put themselves through.
Yeah. So back then you put yourself through the academy and then you had to, fight and beg for somebody to hire you. And you only had 1 year when you graduated to find a job. If not, you had to go back through the whole damn thing again. So anyway, I was fortunate. I got a job in a 1 square mile town. We always joke nothing ever happens here. And I did that for a couple years. I got hired on part-time, and then got on full-time. Left there, went to a much larger agency where I spent almost 17 years. Left as a sergeant, became an assistant chief in a city just outside Dayton, Ohio. I was only there for about a year when the chief job opened up in my hometown. And that's where I spent the last 10 years as the chief. So 4 agencies over 29 years. It was a fun ride. Saw a lot, saw a ton, and learned a lot along the way. Worked for some good leaders, worked for some bad ones, but it made me who I am today. Then obviously, I started teaching part-time in the academy back in 99, playing a bad guy for traffic stops, for scenario training. And I've been teaching the academy ever since. I don't teach as much now as I used to in the police academy because now I've got, I travel the country with Caliber Press doing training for them. I do a bunch of stuff here in Ohio. And then I've got my consulting and my expert witness work through Crosden Consulting that's just taken off, which is kind of one of the reasons why I had to make the decision to retire. I just had so much going on outside of the police department that, I was burning the candle at both ends. And somewhere along the way, I still got to be a father and a husband. So it's a fun ride, man. It was fun, man. 29 years, it flew by. And, I can remember when I was a young cop, I remember the old guys. It'll be here before you know it, kid. I'm like, you're crazy, dude. You're
And then
crazy.
10 years later, you're the same age as them. You're like, oh, man, I thought they were old then, right? And you're
Yeah.
still young. And then later on, they retire. You're like, wow, I'm the same age or older than they were, and I
Yep.
still feel young. I'm like, and that's how those
Yeah.
guys look at you.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. I got my wife threw a retirement party for some friends and family last weekend, and she had these old pictures set up on display, and it looked more like a wake than it did a party because there was, all these old pictures of me as a cop and stuff. But I was flipping through some material that I had, and just thinking back on dude, just how different the profession is. Now I really sound like the old guy.
No, I know, but that's my point. So you spent 17 years at the one agency, and then you were at a smaller agency. I started in a smaller agency for a year and a half until I got where I am now and have been for 25 years. But the training, much different. Smaller agencies back in 99, 2000, here's the keys, here you go,
Yeah.
right? It's,
Yeah.
now the detailed FTO process, everybody's going through. How was your training when you started on the road? What did you have? What did you have to do?
The first agency, I rode around with the old guy for about 4 shifts, and he gave me a phone number on a piece of paper and said, if you need anything, just call this number. Somebody will come help you. It was interesting. And then the next agency, the second department where I spent about 17 years, it was a very structured, FTO program, as it should have been. And then, but it's funny though, because as I travel around the country, I still, to this day, I still see and hear stories of departments that are training like that today. They just, ride around with the guy for a few days, and once you act like you know where you're going, they just kind of turn you loose. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, in today's world, that is not the way we probably want to be operating.
No, and those agencies become feeder agencies, right? Because nobody stays long
Yeah.
in that culture or that form. So
Yeah.
yeah, they just constantly are turning people over and over. And in Michigan, I think MCOLS has done a good job of kind of mandating some of that training. I don't know, Ohio's got to be about the same. I know you guys
Yeah.
take after Michigan a lot,
Sure, yeah.
but so that's 17 years. What'd you do? What was your thing? And I know now, like you said, with Crosden, you're a use of force expert, and we've even used you in Crosden
Yep.
for some cases. So
Thank
what was
you.
your thing in police work?
They used to call me Trooper because, man, I used to love traffic. I mean, they called me Trooper Hughes for the hell. I just heard it last week at the party. Trooper Hughes, because I loved traffic. I didn't really. I mean, I did the crash reports because it was part of the job, but I liked going out, sitting on the road, and just watching cars drive by. And I just loved getting drugs and guns and felons off the
So you
road.
had highway in that
Yeah, I mean, we
place,
had a
right?
little bit of highway, but it was a large territory. We had a bunch of roads. We bordered Cincinnati, 2 different districts in Cincinnati. Like, we literally bordered them. We shared streets with them. So we were dealing with the Cincinnati, any big city, you know how this is. You're close to Detroit. So, we were dealing with just a different criminal element. But man, I loved using and knowing the traffic code and using that to my benefit, and working, like, I'll call it interdiction, although it wasn't an interdiction team, but like working interdiction was just really fun. I love the cat and mouse game. It's funny. I just literally today, Mike, I just published today on crosdenconsulting.com. If you click on the blog, I just wrote an article today on the need to get back to letting cops be cops and stop making excuses for being lazy. Because when I was a young cop, like, man, I loved going after bad guys. It was just so fun, right? That cat and mouse
It was
game.
a game. You're right. Turn the
Yeah.
lights off. They'd wait. They'd
Yeah.
take off. They think you left. They'd take off. You're following them around. I mean,
Yeah.
and so when we started, it was a competition. Like,
Mhm.
what could you get? What could you do? And then hiring gets stagnant for a while, right? And it doesn't become that way. So we're fortunate now where we've got 7, 8 new bodies, and it's getting, some of our lieutenants are saying, this reminds me of when we started, when we were
Heck
out
yeah.
there, like fighting each other to go out there, which benefits the community, right? Because they're
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about that being the police, and there was a great article that one of the chiefs said, "I'll back you 100% as long as you're within policy and within the law." And I think people need to hear that, but they also have to understand they have to follow that. But where where do you think with COVID, where did that hit when it talked about getting out there and being the police? What did that do to the agency you're at, or where you saw
Well,
some policing?
no, yeah, and I mentioned that in the article today. COVID was an excuse to, I shouldn't say it was an excuse, that came out wrong. We're still using, in some places, we're still using COVID as an excuse to not do anything. You know, we have certain agencies that encourage laziness. They breed laziness. Laziness is accepted in law enforcement. We often say in our classes, it's easy to be lazy in law enforcement. Take it one step further. It's even easier to be a lazy supervisor in this job. So I think because of COVID, I was telling my guys, I was the chief when COVID happened, right? I was like, hey, don't do anything. Don't do anything. Don't stop anybody. Don't talk to anybody. Don't become involved. And that drug on in some places. It's still dragging on today, 6 years later.
There are places that have not recovered. And we were a place when I think I was our DB lieutenant maybe at the time. And, I remember sending an email like, hey, COVID is over. Get out there and let's go. Because if you're worried about it, and that, whatever, this isn't a political thing, but you're in your own car with the windows up, roll them down, whatever you want, and sit there and wave.
Yeah.
They want to see you out there. You
Right.
don't have to go crazy and be in front of everybody, but be seen,
Yeah.
right? Be out there so they know we're out there. And our guys ended up doing that. And I like to think we recovered faster than some, but when I talk to other chiefs, they're still recovering from it because there was a hiring crisis. So you hired so many people during that they thought, oh, this is how we do the job, right? And it was difficult. And
well, and
you're right.
You add on top of that, you add lack of accountability. You add on top of that lack of leadership or poor supervision, and it's just this recipe for disaster. So to your point, you hire folks in that time frame where they're not really taught to go out there and be aggressive. See, when you got hired on day one, you were taught to go out there and stop cars, look for bad people, look for this, look for that. These are the people you want to jump out on. These are the cars you want to stop. Like, pay attention to these behaviors. When these kids are hired 2019 or 2020, 21, 22, they weren't taught that. So now if they were never taught it, they've never caught up, then they don't understand it. And then you take in some jurisdictions, you get hired in 2020, you get hired in this nonsense, 2023, 2024, now maybe you're an FTO or a supervisor, and you see where this is going, right? Now these folks have never, ever developed that skill set, and they can't teach to the next generation. So here we are now, 6 years later, and we're that far behind the curve in some places. Now, what I am happy to see and hear about are the agencies are like, hey, let's get back to being cops. We need to get back out there. We need to get, we're getting paid to do a job. No more sitting in the parking lots. No more scrolling Netflix. No more, looking at TikToks and dumb stuff like that. Let's get out there and do our job. But I can't quantify this, but I don't know that that's as popular as I wish it was, because I know that it's not occurring everywhere. But
no, yeah. So it's not only COVID; it's reaction to some of the high-profile incidents, some in Minnesota, some other places. And they look at their prosecutor. Do you back the police? Do you back that? And it was just a recipe for disaster for several years. Now I think we are through that, in especially with this influx of, I'm not going to say just young, but new officer. And we're trying to promote, get out there and do your job and keep the residents safe. They pay high tax for a good police service, right? And we have to be out there. So 17 years, you're in the one agency. You are a traffic guru. What else do you do? Any instructor training?
Man. I loved being an FTO when I was there. I loved being a first line sergeant, first line supervisor. Both of those positions, as we both know, are some of the most influential in the organization.
When I teach the class on culture and mission values, it's the supervisor and the sergeant is a lot of times the most important person.
Yep.
But
100%.
what people forget is the FTO is going to ingrain that culture into you and teach you what's right and wrong. And people sometimes forget that because it's a younger officer, hopefully that's energetic, but people forget the FTO is the key to successful employee at the police department.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you want to change the culture at the department, if you want to really have an impact, positive impact on what your organization is going to look like, who do you have training that next generation? Mm-hmm. In some departments, unfortunately, they still have the old crusty guy who hates his life, who is the one who's got the brand new kid in the car with them. Well, what do you think that kid's going to learn inside that car? What not to do, how much the place sucks, the city sucks, the mayor sucks, the chief sucks, everybody sucks.
And you think that's normal, right? So then you
Right.
acclimate to that, and now I've just created another cancer. It's just spread. So
it's
I
kind of
think
like
people forget that FTO process.
Yeah. Well, and you got to train them how to FTO. I remember teaching an FTO class. So I was teaching a class on how to FTO. And I forget what state I was in, but I was somewhere, and class starts at 8:00 and most cops are there by 8. And about 8:05, guy comes in the back door and you can tell he doesn't want to be there. As soon as he opens the door, I'm like, this guy does not want to be here. And he walks in and he looks around. Of course, there's no seats in the back of the room. The only seats available are in the front, right? You're there late. The back's the first thing that gets taken. So there's no seats in the front. This guy walks in, looks around. He's like, oh, like that. I'm like, can I help you? He's like, there's no effing where to sit back here. So he grabs a chair, long story short, grabs a chair and he makes his own seat in the back row, like in the aisle. I'm like, whatever. So as I'm talking about, teaching and this, that, and the other, being an FTO, he's like, he has arms crossed and he's just one side of his neck and he's just in complete disgust on how he doesn't want to be there. So we were talking about, again, just generational differences and stuff. And he raises his hand and I'm like, oh, this ought to be good. And I'm like, yes, sir. And he's like, you want me to tell you what the effing problem is with these kids today? And I'm thinking, wow, I can't wait to hear this. He's like, when the computers go down in the car, these kids don't know what the hell to do. And I said, you know what? That's a great point. I said, why do you think that is? He's like, they're just all effing spoiled. I said, no. I said, here's what you have to understand. Ever since these kids were popped out of their mom's womb, they have had
iPad generation. Yeah.
They've had a phone in their hand or an iPad in their hand. And that behavior is all that's all they know. So when a computer goes down in a car, when an MDC goes down, they don't know what to do because they've never been without that technology. So I told him, I said, what I would do if I were you, because you've been around the block a few times, is I would take whatever experiences you have and teach that to them, because there are a lot of things that they need to do outside of that car, right? Maybe go show them how to do a walking beat in a high crime neighborhood, how to go out and make confidential informants, how to go out and, just teach them how to go do old school policing.
We talked about that in the past here too. Take the computer out of the car, right? Make them look for the violations. Don't just run plates, right?
Yeah.
Make them look for something. Go up and down. Dispatch, call dispatch, radio it in. And sometimes it's so easy, they forget how to do the job. So
I always joke, if all you do is sit around and run license plates, you're missing so much stuff. If all you're doing is, and I see it all the time, they're just sitting there typing in tags. I'm like, you guys are missing all kinds of things. But yeah, that dude was hilarious. By the end of the day, he appreciated the class. But when we first started, I thought, you know what? I couldn't imagine that guy being my FTO. I just couldn't imagine. What a miserable experience that would have been. And here's the other thing. The department, what? That's the best you got? I used to always joke, when you're a recruit and you get in the car with your FTO on the first day, the recruit thinks to themselves, this person has to be the best cop in the agency, because there's no way they would put the POS with the brand new person, right?
Yeah. No, it's a great point.
That's what
this is what I signed up for, huh?
Yeah. So then you spend all that time and money going to the academy and learn all the things you learn. And then you go out there and you're on your first day and this is the person that shows up. It starts just you can just imagine what that poor guy or gal's thinking with that dude.
No doubt. So 17 years there, you get the assistant chief or deputy chief at another agency. What was it that made you make that jump or decide to take that jump?
Great question. A story that I've told all across the country. I hit a ceiling, and to make the story short, I realized if I didn't make some changes, I didn't know what was going to happen to me. And what I mean by that is, it was about a 50-man department, 50 officer department. And they hired a bunch of us at the same time. And when I say a bunch, within a few years. This is back in the COPS grant, back in that day, So they hired several of us at the same time. And I remember looking to my left and looking to my right, and, there was going to be one promotion coming up. And I was like, you know what, a couple of these guys over here, I think would they be cool to work for? And a couple over here, like maybe they'd be all right. But man, I don't know about that person down there if they ever got promoted. So I made the decision, if I'm not being challenged, Mike, then I start to get bored. And quite honestly, I was kind of like to that point where I just wasn't feeling like I was being challenged anymore. I was coming in, I'd been a sergeant for the longest time. Now, granted, at the time, I was the youngest sergeant ever promoted there, which was cool. I was the first sergeant in charge of their street crimes unit that they created, so that was fun. And I did my time there, then I rotated back to the road, and running the shift was great, don't get me wrong. It just became the same thing day in and day out, right? Running a beat, taking care of your people, lots of responsibility. I enjoyed it. I also knew that I wanted to do more. I was capable of doing more, and I was ready to make that change. So, yeah, the city up in Dayton, which is about 50 miles away from where I am, or excuse me, 50 minutes away from where I am, was hiring an assistant chief. And I honestly thought there's no way they're going to hire me. I'm a sergeant at a larger agency, but still, you're just a sergeant. And, this is an assistant chief job at a city. Well, be careful what you wish for, because
Just might get it,
you
right?
just might get it. So, yeah, so I get up there and I get this job, and I'm like, okay, great. I'm being challenged again. I'm having fun. I don't know anybody. It's a whole new county. I don't know anybody up there. So I'm just, getting in my groove, and we're having fun, and we're making some changes. And then the community that I live in, their chief retired. And I had some folks reach out like, hey, would you consider applying here as the chief? And I thought, man, I've only been up here for, 8 or 9 months. Like, they're not going to hire me where I live, where this department's at. Like, it's one of the fastest growing suburbs in the state. Everybody and their brother's going to be trying out for this job. But I'm like, yeah, I'll put my name in the hat, because, yeah, I'm driving an hour each way. So my 8-hour day becomes 10, 10 becomes 12, 12 becomes 14. You do the math. So, I throw my name in the hat and I go through the process. And fortunately for me, the community was looking for a certain type of leader. They wanted a certain kind of a chief. They wanted a change agent. They wanted someone to come in there and make some adjustments and do some things. And I checked all those boxes. So that was in March of 2016 that I came.
10 years there.
Yep, 10 years.
When you talk
as
about
chief.
change agent, what type of changes were they looking for?
Everything. They wanted culture change. They wanted equipment changed.
And how long had that agency been in place? Long time?
Interesting. The department was founded in 1993.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was the agency's 5th police chief since 93. It was it's one of these communities where it was all farm and now it's a city, basically. We're located between Cincinnati and Columbus, closer to Cincinnati, but we're in a location that's just booming. I mean, booming. And quite honestly, I think the community grew faster than the department could grow. They went from 5,000 residents to 35,000 residents almost in 20 years. It's just crazy how much it blew up out here. So yeah, they needed a lot of things changed. And here's the thing about cops. Well, you've heard this. Cops hate change and they hate things being the same, but they really want to work for an agency where they feel valued and appreciated and trusted to do their job. So I came in, and I'd be lying to you if I told you that it was all rainbows and sunshine every day, because the first 3 years were challenging because we had to make some changes. There's some people that just don't work there anymore, but I've never terminated one employee. There were some folks just said, hey, this isn't for me. And, they chose to move on. But I was very, very happy when I walked out of there a month ago, when I looked back and I looked at that agency and I thought, man, we've done a lot. 10 years as a chief, as is a long time. That's,
oh my gosh, yeah.
That's a long time as a chief. So
yeah, you're not kidding.
But I look back and I'm proud of the place. If you talk to the guys and gals that are there now, that were there when I got there, and you talk to people from the outside who were familiar with the department, they'll all say the same thing. It's not even recognizable. And for me, that's what I take pride in. And, I've always said, as a chief, you want to leave on your terms. Too many folks get to our level and they leave on someone else's terms. They leave under a scandal, under an indictment, under a bad shoot, under some drama. The first person that goes is the chief, right? They need a fall guy. Boom, we're going after the chief. You get an officer on night shift who makes a traffic stop and shoots and kills someone, and it doesn't look good. 8 a.m. the next day, you're gone, right? As if you control the guy at 3 a.m. making a traffic stop. But you understand what I'm saying. I wanted to leave on my terms, and I wanted to leave when things were good. I wanted to be able to leave, give the keys to the new chief, and say, "Here you go, man. there's not a whole lot you're going to have to do. And for me, that's exactly what happened. My assistant chief took over. He had been there since the early 2000s. He saw it when it was a different agency than it is today. And, he and I talked when I met with him in January and said, hey, I'm probably going to be gone between March and May. And he was like, listen, if you stay, I'll be your number 2. If you leave, I'll take over. You just let me know what you want me to do. And man, I left it in great hands. And of course I asked him, like, what are you going to change? He goes, like, things are kind of going pretty good.
The nameplate on the door. Yeah.
Yeah. He took my picture out and put his portrait in there, and he changed the name and the name tag. And I went in there about a week after I retired to pick up some things. And, I expect like all this stuff to be different. Like, what did he do? What did he do? And nothing's changed. I'll be there in a few weeks. I could go back for some training, and I suspect there's not going to be a whole lot of changes. But that's how you want it to be, right? Like that's how you want to walk away. I'm in Cincinnati, Google Cincinnati Police Department right now, and the chief just left, and it's just this term. There's just all this drama, and I'm just like, man, I feel bad for her. I don't know enough to speak to it, but it seems like every time some of these chiefs leave, there's always just drama surrounding it, and you never want to be like that. And I knew that I had done a lot in the 10 years that I was there. I knew that they got some challenges coming up. They're going to have to raise some more money. They're going to have to probably run a levy, and they've outgrown the facility. That's going to be the biggest challenge.
How many people again?
31.
Okay.
31. Now they should be about.
I knew ours were comparable. So we're 34 sworn. When I started, we were 52. I mean, that's how much it's changed, but yeah, so comparable size, and we're building a new station right now. So
yeah,
it's when you started there as chief, how many did you have?
15, 16.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you doubled in size, right? I mean,
doubled in size, passed a levy, got some. So in Ohio, I won't bore you with all the details, but in Ohio, the way that townships are funded, townships are kind of like cities, but they're just funded different. We're only funded primarily through property taxes. So if we were a city of 35,000 residents, 36 square miles, we would have probably 45 or 50 officers. But because we're all property tax based, we don't have that revenue that comes in like a city does.
The state revenue that gets back to,
we're at like 30. So that's a challenge, and that's something that they're going to have to deal with, down the road. But you know what? I'm fine with that because the new chief is set up, understands what needs to happen. I still live in the community, so I'm going to help him, as long as he asks with, whatever I can do to help get those issues passed and things, and still be a resource to him. But yeah, man, I still feel like I'm on vacation, quite honestly. Like, I feel like I'm going back to work Monday. It just doesn't seem like I'm not the chief anymore, which is kind of weird.
Well, speaking of going back to work, we'll get back to maybe some of the accomplishments there and everything, but what is it that you're doing now? I know you always have so many irons in the fire. What things are you doing besides Cross and consulting, and what is it that drew you out?
Well, like I said, I think I realized I'd done all I can do, and I was ready. I was ready for some change. And, a phenomenal department, phenomenal people. We just hired some really great guys and gals, and they're going to be phenomenal. I needed to be challenged, and which is a good problem, right? There's nothing going on. There's no challenges. That's not a bad thing when you think about it. But I knew I wanted to be busier and do more. I'm going to continue doing the teaching, the consulting, and the expert witness work. I really enjoy defending cops around the country and use of force and issues associated with that. And then I've got some other, you said irons in the fire. I've got some other irons in the fire that I'm looking at, exploring. I have to see which one is going to line up best with kind of what I want to do. But I definitely am going to stay in the law enforcement field, still want to be a resource, still want to be, I hate to use the word influencer because it sounds like I should be doing a TikTok dance or something, but I still like having that influence. We've told how many people on this program to make sure you have a LinkedIn profile and make sure you keep it up to date and you post on it regularly because people see that. And, for me, I just went over 17,000 followers, that's a lot of people when you think about it.
That is an influencer, right?
Yeah, I guess,
You'll
right?
be doing TikTok dances next.
Yeah. But because of that, you brand yourself, you become like this kind of a unofficial official resource and like voice in the profession. And some of these companies out there that, are in the law enforcement space, they see that and they've reached out like, hey, would you consider promoting our product, or would you consider being an advisor for us, or an influencer? One company actually called it a strategic influencer. And if it's a product that I believe in, it's something I think is going to make the profession better and keep our cops safe and more efficient, then, I'm going to get behind it. So you'll see some of that stuff coming down the pipe here, probably sooner rather than later. It's just, I've got two kids that are, 10 and 12, about to be 11 and 13. And, I want to make sure it lines up with what I want to do with them as well. Because one of the cool things that, a lot of us in this profession don't get to do is spend that time. Spend that time.
You got time to buy a new mic too. Scott, let me ask you this. When I teach in a lot of our introductions, I throw this question out as a hot take, right? An unpopular opinion. What is one of the single biggest problems you've seen in law enforcement, to law enforcement? An unpopular take, though, not the basic one, something different.
Well, I think I talked about it earlier. I think it's a lack of accountability inside the organization. I think it's cops not being accountable to themselves, not doing the job they were hired to do because it's easy to be lazy, as we talked about. I think it's supervisors not wanting to hold people accountable, supervisors not having the training, not understanding the importance of the role that they play as a frontline sergeant that they have in the organization. And then I think it goes all the way to the top, probably to include, chiefs that just, quite honestly, I forgot where they came from. And, you said what's not popular. Well, there you go. I probably just pissed off a bunch of people. But, my friend Bob Meter, who I teach with around Ohio, objectivelyreasonable.com, there's a free plug for him. He says this is the hardest job in America. And I really do believe that it is the hardest job in America. And when you get promoted, you're supervising people who are doing the hardest job in America. And the minute that you forget how much influence and power you have over people as a supervisor, that's the minute I think you become less effective. So I think it all circles around accountability. And, I tell the cops on the street and the sergeants, police wherever you work the way you expect cops to patrol where you live. Because a lot of guys don't live in this community where they work, right? They commute back and forth.
And that ties into one of my biggest pet peeves, right? When they got rid of residency, and I know it's an unpopular opinion, I think non-residency is one of the biggest problems to law enforcement. And people say, I don't want to live. And I get it. Like Detroit, you get Cincinnati, big cities. But for a town like us, when you could pick up and move, you decided this is no longer professional. This is just a job. I'll come pick up my paycheck. That's why when I was our union president years ago, we got a residency bonus. If you live in town, you're going to get extra money from there because you're going to protect it. You live there. The family lives there. You have family sleeping at night. And I think, and it's an unpopular opinion, non-residency was a disaster for small towns in community policing.
Well, and I understand the premise behind it, right? I mean, I live for the last 10, since 2003, I've lived here, but for the last 10 years, I've lived here as a chief. And when you're out, you want to go to the grocery store, you want to go to a restaurant, you don't want people walking up, hey, chief, real quick, if a car's blocking the sidewalk, is that something we should call you? It's like,
Yeah.
But
how many calls do you get, on personal? It's like, you can call dispatch or 911 for that. Yeah. There's not much I can do right now from the game I'm at or wherever.
Yeah. But I mean, I understand. I mean, but at the same time, that's, it kind of comes with the job. When if you take the job and you decide that you're going to become the big fish in the little fish bowl, people are going to pay attention to you. But but that brings up a whole nother thing. If you live where you work, people know who you are. They're watching you. You're just under this big spotlight. So I know for me and my wife and family, for the last 10 years, we made a very concentrated effort that we would rarely eat out inside the community because of perception and because, I don't necessarily want people walking up and asking me all these kind of questions. And she doesn't want that. We want to spend some family time together. So anyhow, I understand the reasoning behind the residency requirement. I see both sides of the coin. I do appreciate your perspective in that, if you live here, I think you might pay more attention to what the hell is going on. Not that you don't if you don't live here, but
No, yeah, and
you
that
know,
we've got guys that are phenomenal that
yeah,
don't, and
yeah. But I just
but
remind my guys when we talk about accountability, like police the way you want your cops that patrol where you live. What do you want them to do? Do you want them sitting in a church parking lot watching Instagram reels all night, or do you want them out driving around? Do you want them making traffic stops? Do you want them trying to get guns and drugs off the streets because that property values stay high, your house value stays high. You know, it's just a residual effect, if you will. And I think sometimes guys and gals can forget that. But that was a long answer to your question
no,
that you threw
that's all
me.
right. Yeah,
But
and if I do it in training, and you don't get that long because there's multiple people that have to. But since you're the only guest today
yeah,
and host, that you get to take all the time you want. What about you think back in your career? What is the one thing or a couple things that you wish you would have had the opportunity to do, or you sit there and be like, man, I really wanted to do this, it just didn't fall in line, or
I think before I got into law enforcement, I wish I would have followed in my dad's footsteps and become a Marine. There's no doubt about that. That's the number one thing. That's the biggest regret in my life is not joining the Marine Corps to follow my dad's footsteps. As far as on the job goes, one thing that I did not ever do, I was never a detective. Now, I ran a street crimes team, so we did a lot of investigations, but I was never an actual detective. And I think I probably would have enjoyed that. Probably not for long because my personality, I want to go, go, go. I often joke, if we had a shooting, I could care less about the blood spatter on the wall. I could care less about the fingerprints. I could care less about the evidence. I just wanted you to tell me who did it, and I'll go find them. Like for me, like that was always my style, So I don't know that I would have been a good detective, but I do think as far as like what's missing on my resume today, looking back, it was having never been a detective. I think once you work in detectives, and I know a lot of agencies, including the one I just left, they now rotate people through the detective division after a few years because it gives you a different perspective. And I understand the reasoning behind that. And I agree with that, which is why we did it. But I do think had I spent a little bit of time with detectives, it may have in some ways made me a little bit better as a chief. Not sure, I don't know, but I just having that knowledge. But anyhow, that's it. That's it. Oh, not man, bruh, as my kid would say, bruh. I've been blessed, man. It's been a great career. Really has been a great one.
what about the flip? What's the one call, the one case that you can't shake? Maybe as a chief, maybe as a sergeant, maybe a patrolman. It doesn't matter what agency. Is there that one case that you just can't shake?
Well, yes, there's several. That's the problem.
And that's the problem. You
Yeah,
talk about cops see so many traumatic
yeah.
incidents in their life as opposed to the regular citizen. It's
I
sometimes
mean, in
how many
2020,
can you count?
in 2021, when I was the chief here, I had two officers shoot and kill a guy in a domestic, and 3 months later, I had a 4-year-old girl drown in a pond. That was like bam, bam, double punch in 21. Pow, pow. That's the most recent ones that really really stick out. And then I had a guy got drunk and high and rolled over and suffocated his like 4-week-old baby. And I remember holding the baby in my the baby in my arm and dead, and pulling I pulled another call. I pulled a 16-year-old kid out of a pool. He was dead, got high and fell in the pool and nobody realized it. There's too many, man. There's too many.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the
And I
ones
think that's
that
the problem
quick.
is
Yeah.
people don't realize, right? And you didn't work in the biggest agency, right? A mid-size agency and then smaller agency and still see the same stuff. Maybe not same volume as some of these others, but I think people forget that are not in law enforcement things. And my oldest, he's in his second year of college and he's like, I want to be a cop and I want to do this. And it's like, I never discourage anybody. I just try to sit there and envision like the suicide calls, the hangings, the this. Do you want to see that? Do you have the ability to see it? And who am I to say he can't, right? But it's hard, and I'd be proud of him if he did get into the field. But as a parent now, you worry about that. Like, man, there's
Yeah.
these things you see that you'll never ever unsee, no matter how hard you try.
I think fortunately for us, to that point, Mike, we've gotten so much better in the wellness space that he'll be, at least by the time he gets out and gets out there, he'll be better prepared to deal with. He'll have the coping skills.
And that's true. And I think what you did, and we've talked about it on numerous episodes, the check-ins, the mental health check-ins. I was able to work with our union a couple months ago. We got it in the contract now. I've got the provider, talked to her a couple days ago. We're going to set something up for everybody, same as you do, twice a year.
Good.
And I think stealing those ideas, right?
Yep.
And sharing those ideas are what makes effective leadership. But so I talk about that. But what is maybe one of the biggest things that you instituted at your department as chief that you're most proud of?
Okay, here's a political answer. Culture. It's not a program. It's not a piece of equipment. It's not not a new assignment, or we created new divisions, because we did all that. We brought in technology like you wouldn't believe. The wellness stuff. My guys can do jujitsu now on duty as part of their workout program. I mean, we got great equipment, great rifles. We got all that stuff. For me, it's the culture, and I worked my what off.
And how
for
long did it
years.
take you? Because you can destroy a culture like that, but it
Yeah.
takes years to build a positive culture and the right people.
Yeah, and it's all about the people. It's not me. I just set the tone, and then I'm like, here's how we're going to do it. And then, people bought into me. They trusted me. They knew the direction we were trying to go, and, and it worked. But it probably took 4 years, maybe 5. I mean, it took some time. It probably took from 2016 to about 2020. And then, of course, you had COVID, so then we had to deal with that. But yeah, it took years, and then there's, look, there's, no matter where you work, no matter how good you are or how, whatever, there's going to be people that are going to they just don't like you. They don't care for you. They don't like your style. They don't like your personality. And that's fine. I look at, generally speaking, are we doing the right things for the right reason, and, and making the place better than you found it. And we definitely did. Again, it wasn't rainbows and sunshines the sunshine the whole time, but we made a lot of really good changes over time, because
And sometimes people don't realize those until way later or after you're gone, or an incident comes up and you're like, man, sure glad you did that. Right.
Right. Yeah.
or at least the insurance company is sure glad you did that. But
yeah. It was a fun ride, but now I'm going to take, like doing things like this with you, like the podcast, and having guests on and talking about, hey, what works, what doesn't work. Cause I want to keep giving back. And I think that's important. I don't know anything. I just know a lot of people, and I just want to continue being a voice and an advocate and make the profession better. Because if you and I aren't having this conversation right now, and people don't listen, we're never going to make any changes, right? Like, it's just going to be, in law enforcement, government's notorious for just kicking the can down the road and, like, not making any changes. Well,
and that's the hard part, especially as chiefs, when some chiefs are staying for a year or two to boost the pension.
No.
When you want to make change, it takes time, and it takes some political capital to make that change, and you got to cash in. So let's talk just real quick, and we did a whole episode on the National Academy, but talk about something a little bit different. How do you believe attending the FBI National Academy helped you professionally in your job and maybe now outside?
Well, for on the job, it was awesome. So, it was different going in the NA as the chief, right? And you and I both experienced that.
Yeah, not many. I think we were some of the few as a chief, because it should be for people to learn some of those skills, and bigger agencies, it might be a requirement to have that.
Yeah. So I think for me, it was there's a lot of professional development. It was a lot of looking around, having conversation with folks, and realizing we're doing things the right way. Like, we're doing what we need to be done, because you and I both heard how many stories of just broken this and broken that. And it was good to push myself in ways that hadn't been pushed in maybe ever, like the Yellow Brick Road and some of the PT challenges, and doing the skydiving, and just some of the things that we did that I never would have probably done. It was good for me to, like, find my why, find my, kind of like refocus, because we get in these positions and we go. And yeah, we may take a vacation here, a vacation there, a long weekend here, but we never get to really just disconnect in this profession. So I think that 10 weeks of just completely disconnecting from what was going on back here, trusting that things were going to be fine and not worrying about it, let me kind of refocus and find my center again, if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense. I mean, they tell you it's the only time you're going to have 10 weeks to focus on yourself.
Yeah.
The kids, the marriage, all the job stuff. You're focusing on professional development for you for 10 weeks. And you're never going to get that chance again.
Right. Yep. That was the biggest thing for me. on the professional side was just, that part. And then I think now, people recognize that headshot that we all had done. Like, people recognize that portrait, and in both the public and the private sector, they know that, hey, you're part of 1% of folks in the world, law enforcement leadership. You're part of 1%. And they know what it takes to get through that program. And I think that speaks to you as a person, that you had the drive and you had the motivation, you had the commitment, and you were willing to do all that. And it shows, I think it speaks a lot about your character and like what you're wanting to do, what's your work ethic like, because you can't just go in there and do nothing. I mean, contrary to what some might think, you can't do nothing. You're not going to make it. So I think folks see that and they recognize, okay, this person committed 10 weeks of his life away from his family to do these, to do all this stuff. And I think now, having retired and these private sector companies see that, I think that's one of the reasons why they want to reach out. One, they know you have a network, right? Because you know people now, because there's 250 of us there. We're all, part of these groups now. But then they also, I think, can appreciate what it took to get there. And I think that work ethic and that drive and that motivation and that dedication and commitment and all those words, that's appealing to folks. That's appealing to people that may want to say, hey, would you want to come work for me in this capacity? Because we know you can do it because you've proven it.
Would you go back again?
I would. I
tell people I go tomorrow, right? It was great.
Yeah, it was fun. I don't know if I want to write them papers again, but I'd go for the camaraderie and I'd go for that yellow brick road. Yeah, I haven't ran 6 miles since then. I mean, I work out all the time, but I haven't ran that.
I don't think I've ran 6 total. Like since then, not just at one point. I just haven't. But so what's next? What do we see next? I know you talked a little bit about it. Where are we going to see you? What is on the horizon?
Stay tuned. I mean, we're going to keep doing this podcast. We're going to keep teaching, keep consulting, Crosden Consulting. I want to keep building that business out. And then just wait and see what happens. Like I said, there's still irons in the fire. The big iron is now gone, having retired, but there's still irons in the fire. And, I'm too young to just quit. So we got work to do. So just have to wait and see, man.
Perfect. Well, I know we try and keep these half hour, 45 minutes, an hour, but let's do this. Why don't you take it out of here? Say what you want to say. Retired Chief Scott Hughes, one of the 2 chiefs from the Two Chiefs One Mic podcast. Take it away.
Do we keep calling it two? Do we have to change?
I don't think we changed the name. 1.5.
What? How? Well, 1 point. Yeah, that's weird. What to think about that? No, I think what I want to say is, now that you're obviously still working, I have much more freedom. We've got some requests for some folks to come on the show, and I think I just want to put out there that if you have any interest in coming on the show, shoot us an email, 2chiefs1mic@gmail.com, and let's get you on, because like I said earlier, the only way we make the profession better is by having folks come on and tell stories and talk about programs and things that they're doing. So I want to keep doing that, man, and get some folks on here. So it's been fun, man. What are we up to? What did you say?
29
episodes.
Yeah, next will be 30.
Yeah. So 30 episodes in under 2 years, we're doing good, man. Just you and I.
And learning. That's the best part. And you've said it before. It's not that we know it, right? We bring people on and we're learning as well every time we have somebody on. So it's been great.
And there's no production crew. Yeah. There's no lights. There's no green screens. I mean, this is my curio cabinet.
Can't make us look any better than we do right now.
Yeah. T-shirts and all. Yeah, but no, man. All right, buddy. I'm going to bounce. You got a baseball game to go to. I got a baseball game to go to.
I'm leaving for New York tomorrow. So
all right, well, have fun.
We're good.
All right, buddy.
All right. Sounds good. Right. We'll talk to you.
Thanks, everybody.
1